Agriculture is at the center of our economy, with 44% of our economy that is agri-based. It contributes over 18% to our GDP. Mr. D. Narain, D as he is called by his colleagues, is the MD and CEO of Bayer Crop Science Limited. He's also the Senior Bayer Representative South Asia based out of Mumbai. Very importantly though, he is the global sponsor for Bayer's smallholder farming initiative. Prior to Bayer, Dee spent many years with Monsanto, where he held various national, global, and international roles, including serving as CFO for Monsanto's international business and CEO for the India region. His work experience spans more than 30 years in the agricultural industry, having previously worked for ITC Limited in India as part of its agri-business startup team. Dee, welcome and thank you. Delighted to have you on the In the Spotlight KGP interview series.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here, and I'm looking forward to our conversation.
So I'm going to jump straight in and start by asking you, do you think that the Indian agriculture is poised or moving towards being able to lend to the Sustainable Development Goals as outlined by the Food and Agriculture Organization of the UN to end poverty and hunger by 2030, and will be able to contribute to this goal?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I'll actually answer it even more broadly than the way you framed it up, to say huge opportunity, in fact, to do that and even more. I genuinely believe over the next decade, we can position Indian agriculture as a strong pillar for India's agricultural growth. You talked about in the initial comments that agriculture contributes to 15 to 17% of India's GDP. But at the same time, Shikha, you know, nearly 60% of India's population is in rural India and directly or indirectly contributing to Indian agriculture. Look at the powerhouse of opportunity that we have if we can completely transform Indian agriculture to become globally competitive, address all the issues that they talked about, zero hunger, zero poverty, and on top of it, if you could say that Indian agricultural contribution to GDP could be as much as 1/4, then wouldn't that be a great opportunity for us? Absolutely. So I think that's the vision with which we should look at it. The second aspect I'd also say is, while we're looking at the goals that you articulated, the biggest threat that is facing all of us worldwide is climate change and the impact that is coming to us. And agriculture is at the center of the whole crisis, correct? So if we look at that, the challenges to water, soil health, and all the other things that we are facing today, I think this is a time for action. And I action with a very strong conviction that I believe can be successfully managed, but not only just managed, transform Indian agriculture for the future and future generations.
Right, right. And hence, do you see, I mean, while of course this is a wish list that we have in India, and I know we lead, a lot of changes that are taking place globally from India, but do you see a movement towards, these wishes that we have to be able to eradicate and at least start walking towards the 2030 goal?
Yeah. If I look back as what has happened over the last 18 months or so, starting from when COVID hit us, I think this whole topic has become the center of the conversation. Right. Okay. And why does it give me confidence that now that is the time for us to be different? Because nation after nation, including India, they've realized food security with health security is at the center of the conversation if we don't manage this crisis properly.
Right.
So that also means that we have to start doing things differently. And what I'm encouraged to see is in this entire period, the significant conversations that have started, including steps that the government has taken, starting with the government at the center, but also state government as the state government, starting to look at agriculture very differently than what they have done before, and saying, look, how do we completely transform it? Because big chunks of a population are in rural, and therefore, how do we support it? And so you're starting to see the conversation shift, even in the corridors of the political circles and the administration. That's number one. The second piece is industry and all the broader stakeholders that I would call form the ecosystem are coming together and saying, this is not just a challenge for the government. This is a challenge for all of us. Right. Imagine a world, there's no industry if the farmers don't succeed. There's no consumer and being able to feed ourselves affordably if the farmers don't produce economically and produce more to feed the growing population. Right. So if you start connecting it, the center of the conversation has shifted no longer as a wish list, but how and when. So clearly I'm started seeing this articulation coming together. A good example is some of the programs we in Bio have put forward in this effort, right? So globally, we have a commitment that we will improve livelihoods of 100 million smallholder farmers. Okay, when you talk about globally, they're close to 500 million smallholders, largely in Asia and Africa.
Yeah.
But the biggest chunk, I would say, more than 30 to 35% of that population is with us in India today.
Right.
Okay, they reside in India. So for us, if as buyer, if we have to deliver on this goal, India has to be a biggest component of our ability to make a change and difference. So we've started building out business collaborative models, which are collaborative and end-to-end with a number of other partners. And I go back to what I said earlier, and this is a transformation that I'm starting to see where we are saying, if the end goal is to deliver improving farm incomes, which again is directly linked to the government's goal of doubling farmers' income. Right. If the end goal is to deliver the sustainability metrics of improving water efficiency or soil health, it cannot be done with buyer doing it alone or an off-taker doing it alone or a drip irrigation company doing it alone. How can we all come together to build a collaborative ecosystem? And that is the model that we are creating called Better Life Farming. But even more critical in this piece is creating an agri-entrepreneur structure at the last mile. And that he or she, because this again is a system which could clearly bring in a number of women entrepreneurs in rural India into this kind of a structure to become the last mile connect with hundreds of smallholder farmers to support them in this enterprise. So I think models like this, collaborative models like this, including models which work directly with the government, bringing them as partners, directly with NGO partners who are also doing great work in the field with the singular goal of delivering improving farmer incomes and sustainability metrics will go a long way. And we're starting to see these models come up in a number of other spaces as well. So that gives me hope. The other big piece, Shikha, which is incredible as I see the Indian ecosystem, is digital India. How digital India is, we used to think about it before COVID as a slow creep. Now I call it the biggest leap that I've ever seen. Okay. And the reason I say that is it is there in the way you and I interact with our daily lives, locked down at home in a number of ways, say ordering food, all kinds of things. But you'll be amazed to see the transformation digital is doing with numerous startups and companies like ours, looking at digital as a key enabler to improve farmer incomes, to improve sustainability. What are the smart digital tools? Can the farmer get real-time advisory during the planting cycle so that he doesn't end up planting at the wrong time and has an impact to yield? As an example, right? Soil sensors, imagery. There's so much going on product quality. So and also price transparency. So I think you're starting to see all these coming together. And finally, some of the policies of the government, especially driving FPOs as the point of consolidation.
Right.
All this helps us in the process. So I couldn't be more encouraged. I think it's for all of us. It's the moment is here for us to seize and then make it happen.
I can see the excitement is very palpable, and I agree. In some of the directions that you spoke about, one sees a lot happening on the ground. So, Dee, as someone who's driving the crop science business in India and is at the forefront of increasing the crop yields, both through better quality of seeds, which I know you worked for the largest seed company in the world and you ran it from the front, as well as protecting crops from the pests. What direction are you seeing the business and the sector headed in India? Given the fact that we have a lot of challenges, we are staring at a reduced arable land, we are staring at low per hectare yields, we are seeing decreasing farm sizes. Also, the fact that smallholder definition in India in terms of farm size is very different from what we see in the West.
Yeah, that's a very, very broad question. Okay, I'll start at what are we in Bayer starting to pivot ourselves, and
Sure.
then come back and connect the dots. Right. I think the realization that we are no longer a product company is the starting point. Okay, and why do I say it? Because if you go back to the earlier comments that I made, if you have to be committed or if you have to drive improving farm incomes sustainably, if you have to drive the sustainability metrics, it's just no longer enough to solve the problem of yield, either through seed or crop protection. That's number one.
Sure.
Okay. But having said that, it's absolutely the starting point to ensure that the yield improvements need to continue to happen. But what you need to do is the entire ecosystem of crop system, as I define it, end to end, from the choice of seed the farmer is planting to the right down to the harvest and then selling to the off-taker. The entire cycle need to deliver a business which is economically viable for the farming community. So the first pivot for us is, while we will continue to invest significantly on product and technology innovation, on seed, crop protection, biotechnology, everything digital or whatever it is, the starting point is we're going to be focused on building out the broader ecosystem collaboratively. So that's a big pivot that we will start. That's a journey that we're working on as we speak.
Right.
The second one I would say is in this journey is how do we accelerate innovations, right? A lot of these innovations that we're talking about, example, in the crop protection space, is also linked to modernizing India's regulatory system to bring in world-class competitive technologies at the same time farmers in other parts of the world are able to access. So the second, therefore, how do you work with the government, how we work with the industry to help farmers get these technologies by modernizing the regulatory system to be competitive globally?
Right.
A good example in this is small farmers in China, in Southeast Asia, have access to drones for spraying crop protection products. As an example, okay? And that again links back to the other dimension of sustainability of precision spraying, and therefore is a far better way of effective use of technology, right? And also preserving soil health and all the other elements.
Yes, yes.
We need to bring that in. And I'm really encouraged with the pace at which the government is moving over the last 2 years, working with industry, working on trials and all of these. And yesterday, they have started by approving some of these models at an accelerated pace. I'm confident that this will also be accessible to Indian farmers pretty quickly, right? So technology access in every field at a faster pace is going to be critical. And we as buyer are bringing, showcasing, collaborating with the government, a number of stakeholders to drive thought leadership and access. The third piece, I would say, from our perspective, is building in the digital ecosystem, right? And this to me, again, is a huge cornerstone for success, but with a difference. The difference is, as I talked about the entire end-to-end crop system,
right?
While we might have the opportunity to create digital interventions in some areas, how do you continue to support? How do you continue to work with a number of startups to give them exposure, to plug them in with our ecosystem? Because we have one of the largest footprint of distribution and market reach, and for them to be able to run large-scale pilots. So with that, how do we plug them into our ecosystem? So I think those are the kind of opportunities that we are working on as well. So if I pull all this together, I could clearly see our biggest opportunity that we are starting to create in India is building out a collaborative crop ecosystem with our products, our technologies, with technologies of other collaborators, and having the end goal of improving farmer income and sustainability. So I think that is the path we are in, and it'll take time, right? Because it's like I don't know if you are aware of this, but Bayer has been in India for 125 years. So we're celebrating our 125 years here. Yes. So we're a company with a very, very strong legacy, and possibly older than a number of other iconic companies in India today. And for us, this is the next level of evolution of working with and contributing to in Indian agriculture and society at large. So it's exciting times.
No, that's great. And which leads me to my next question, which you partly answered. But, obviously we talked about soil health, and one of the big challenges where you opened your statement is adverse climate change. And it becomes one of the main threats to sustainable agriculture, due to soil degradation, reduction in yields. Also the fact that, farmers simply can't predict, and hence sometimes there's a lot of wastage, even at the crop stage, forget when it yields into food. And I know that a lot of work is being done in bringing in technology and integrating it at the farmer level. I know Bayer is also a sponsor of the AgTech report, which I was reading, the latest one that came out recently. So how are you seeing the technology's role play out in your sector in the next decade, and specifically at the farmer level? Because, the other challenge I think that India as a country has is that because majority of our farmers are smallholders, access to funds, even if they want to, maybe they can't take the technology and imbibe the technology. So where do you see that headed?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So the first part of your question I'll answer with respect to climate change and all the challenges that we're facing, right? It's not as if we don't know the answers. The answers are quite obvious, right? It's a question of how do we make it happen? And there are a lot of pilots that are happening. Rice is a good example, right? If we look at rice, report after report says that we are the largest exporter of rice, but actually we're exporting water, right? I mean, that is the analogy that people conclude when the amount of water that goes into rice cultivation, it tantamounts to you're exporting water.
Yeah.
But if you just take rice as a specific challenge, and then what is the opportunity? What is the challenge? The challenge clearly is water tables are going down dramatically in Punjab, Haryana, right? It is stark for everybody to see. But at the same time, the vagaries of climate change is going to hit everybody else. So the question is, the debate of crop diversification moving away from rice is an age-old topic, right?
Right.
Clearly, we need to do it. But even before that, why don't we drive an efficient rice crop production system that reduces use of water, that improves soil health, right? As an example.
Right.
And therefore, and there are systems that work. Okay, direct seeded rice is an example. The entire hybrid rice system, not only does it do this, but also reduces, environmental emissions as well. So it's there. Ask yourself, why is it not scalable? It's not scalable because economically, with the subsidy system and everything that is there, it is challenging for the switch. So therefore, how do you work with the government to start moving into an economically viable, sustainable rice system? And some of the models we are also testing is, can we create value for carbon credits, for example, in the rice ecosystem? Okay, that is one example. The second example I would think of is, when you think of value for water, nobody values water, right? The farmer doesn't pay for it. It goes as a social cost in the state governments. Can we start building value for all of these, right? In this whole ecosystem, to somewhere start creating a sustainability credit for water efficiency, carbon credit, and all of these things. I'm just giving you big ideas. I don't have an answer, but that is the kind of a movement that we need to bring as we are looking at it collaboratively, transform this whole rice production system. It is not as if the answers are not there, but how do we start with policy, with industry, with farmers, start making the shift? And then the second one is crop shift itself. Can we move away from rice to other crops? And then, because if rice efficiency goes up, you can produce more rice in the same amount of land, so that you can release the land to move to other crops, or you can start shifting up, right? How can you enable that? What are the policy changes? So I think these kind of decisions, these kind of thought leadership, I think is coming to the center of the table. And I'm optimistic that as data comes in, as we're starting to demonstrate values of these pilot and start connecting the dots, there could be an opportunity to make some of the shift. And the last point I would make is, if you don't make shift in some of the biggest areas of challenges like water, you won't move the needle, right? So therefore, also we need, go into the key crops which guzzle water the most and start making an impact and change. And so how do you do it, and how do you bring economically viable change is the path forward. And then the second part of the question, you rightly talked about access, right? Access to smallholders.
Yeah.
And there I go back to the first comment on the better life farming model that we are creating is exactly that. Underserved farmers. How do you go there to those farming communities with access to better quality inputs, access to lower cost financing, access to agronomy knowledge and handhold them through the process, and access to off-takers with transparent pricing, and therefore, how do you manage to do the whole ecosystem together? And today, as we speak, over the last 2 years, when we started this model, we have more than 1,000 centers across the country today. And a number of them are actually in pockets where we have smallholder farmers who need intervention. Bihar, Chhattisgarh, parts of UP. So our and Orissa, for example. So these are the focus areas where we are going and starting to say, with these kind of collaborative models, and there it is not just Bayer alone. We've got great partnership with Yara, with NetFM. Tata Trust is a great NGO working with us, and a lot of startups like off-takers, like they have AgroStar, AgriBazaar, all of them help complement the whole ecosystem. Now, it's early days, but where I truly believe the opportunity is, these models we have proven, because we have got IFC as a partner who continuously looks at the socioeconomic value creation. We are starting to prove doubling of farmers' income, improvement in sustainability metric. So I think this is the kind of models that I think we all should work together to start scaling up to deliver what you just said, improving access to smallholder communities, which will improve livelihoods as a direct corollary. I think that is the connection that we need to make. And the last point I make before I forget is outstanding support and recognition from local state governments. They love these kind of models. And why do they love it? Because it's no longer just any one company. Plus, the goal that they have is exactly the goal this ecosystem we are creating has. So the objectives are completely aligned.
Right. So any evidences that have been evidences in India that one can showcase to make this into a far broader alignment of objectives, especially I think at farmer level, it takes a lot to convince them. They're used to the ecosystem, they're used to working in a certain manner. It is at least giving them whatever little income they have. It takes a lot to be able to dissuade them from that and say, okay, let's try something new. Or let's adopt this technology. It's going to give you better prediction of soil, it's going to give you better prediction of climate. Do other crops. In fact, I saw a very nice short snippet of Bayer on how it's telling farmers to grow other crops to put the carbon back, which is beneficial for the soil. So any such things that you think will happen and will take precedence in India and take steam?
Yeah. So look, success breeds success, right? There's no other example. True. And two, farmer endorsement is key. If I see my neighbor successful, I will come back and say, hey, he's doing something. I'm going to learn from it. And can I adopt it? And three, the last mile connect of people who can handhold is key. But the critical piece which will accelerate, and this is where I'm most optimistic, is digital connect, where farmers are starting to see what is clearly playing out and being able to see the effect of these kind of programs in other areas and starting to get connected.
Right.
The second piece is, Shikha, this is where I always am encouraged, because the government is also moving the same direction. Creating FPOs and giving them resources to scale up is also the other opportunity, because we are not able, as Bayer, while I count on nearly 20 million farmers as our customers today using our products and technology,
right,
I'm not in direct connect with them, right? It goes to the distributor, retailer, Absolutely. And that whole network. But imagine the power of doing it through an FPO system, where each FPO has 500 to 1,000 farmers with whom we can then start having this conversation. Imagine the power of the Better Life Farming system, where each Better Life Farming center is touching 500 to 1,000 farmers. When you do these kind of interventions, that's when you're able to demonstrate with them the opportunity of what success could look like by following these kind of planting practices, by getting the agronomy advice, by improving the quality of seed that you buy. And so it comes together when you have visibility and you're able to have this kind of a access. The models that we have tested, right, with everything that we have done, and that is the reason why it is scaling up aggressively, farmers are seeing value. I see more farmers, for example, when I talked about the regions, the states where we have introduced, and then I see farmers in, let's say, Karnataka who are seeing these models are talking to us and say, why are you not bringing it to us? How can we get these models in our areas? Because we see the value of what you're doing. Okay. We also want to benefit it. Okay, so ultimately, I think the whole digital visibility is also going to be a strong multiplier effect for all these kind of efforts. So I think over the next 2-3 years, by connecting the dots, government policy on one side, the whole digital infrastructure that is getting created on the other side, and then in the center, building this whole collaborative end-to-end ecosystem with the right set of like-minded partners coming together and driving change, I think will make a huge difference for the future.
That's great. That's great. So it comes to my last question, which is an interesting aspect for me as well. So in terms of skill sets, I mean, you spoke a lot about digital and how we are also, I feel, poised to do things differently in agriculture. Which skill sets, if any, would you like to see develop to take on this new decade? Which is different from what we've been working with and running with in the last, say, 50 years or 20 years or 30 years.
Yeah, yeah, I think that's a great question. It's not a question of what is different and what is what we need to change, but the 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 core to this, in my mind, is it's no longer just the views of the private enterprise that is going to make a model successful, which means you need to bring in a societal mindset to say, what does its success look like for all stakeholders? Okay, so which means anybody doing business today needs to ask themselves, what is the societal value creation of what I'm doing? And therefore, how can I be how can I get connected with my business and outcomes that delivers that as well? So, but clearly profitability and all of the good things is core. I'm not saying discount it, but this needs to bring in the whole aspect of is social mindset in this whole framework as well as you build these economic systems. The second piece is, again, I'll repeat, you'll be tired of me hearing it. How are you going to be a digital native in this whole ecosystem, right? And I mean, it's just incredible at the pace of change, what is happening. How do we build awareness? How do we learn? Therefore, we can leverage it in how we are trying to execute all our plans, right? And also understand that from an outside-in perspective.
Right.
I remember talking to a very senior government official, right before COVID started. He looked at me and said, "Dee, let me tell you one thing. You will not be able to do any more business with the government if you're not digitally connected with us." Look at the power of the statement.
Wow.
Which means they are moving faster than anyone would have ever realized. The pace of change is incredible. So I think that's a call for action for everybody, right? The second element I would say is a strong skill set of collaboration, right? Because when I say collaboration, you're running a very successful HR firm. Collaboration, we always talk about internal stakeholders, how do I work with my colleagues, et cetera, et cetera. But now it's an open book. You have to collaborate with the broader ecosystem, the broader world. You don't know, there's just the smallest of the companies there could create the biggest value for you if you bring them in and plug them into your ecosystem, right? And therefore, that whole piece will mean redefining how you think of value creation, value sharing, which is very different than how companies have operated till now, right? Because, hey, I'm bringing my technology, I'm going to sell, here is my profitability, I'm done. But this is not the case. This is, what is the total value creation that you're creating for the customer holistically? And therefore, what is a fair and equitable share of value? So collaboration and value sharing are going to be two sides of the coin as you go forward. The third piece, and this again, I would say more and more I'm seeing, and it is no longer just the younger generation, it's becoming a multi-generational kind of a thing, is this whole concept of entrepreneurship, right?
Right.
More and more people want to work in companies with a desire eventually to do something on their own. Okay, either with the company itself as a partner or with a world outside.
Yeah.
So therefore, how are you going to keep them motivated and build entrepreneurship skill set and drive them or help them move towards the entrepreneurship kind of a place, but at the same time, being part of the broader ecosystem or broader family that you have. As buyer, for example, there's so many things that we do. Clearly, I see this opportunity for people. Eventually, they want to go and do something on their own. Clearly, there's value for us, value for them if we do it right. But then, how are you building those kind of skill set? And finally, and this to me is more and more apparent as I see.
Right.
People are coming in with a strong desire for contributing to their values and purpose, right? So what they hold near and dear, and everybody has got different things. So how are you going to link that with what the company is trying to do, both internally and externally? In a number of cases, I see our people are stepping up way beyond their day job, and especially COVID was a great example, and contributing significant value for society, right? So to me, how do you interconnect both, right? In Bayer, we have an outstanding goal, which is health for all, hunger for none. And that is so broad. We could do it in so many different ways with the business and with some of the societal interventions that we have ongoing, right? So to me, these are great opportunities. And when I talk about this, I also want to highlight a couple of areas where I'm really proud of the work our team is doing, which also to some extent talks about what we are looking at in terms of people coming in and skill set. We have a great program called Samavesh, right? And what it does is, if you look at industry and even where we are today, the number of women in the workforce in agriculture, and including, I think it's slightly better in healthcare, is still very low.
Right.
Although nearly 50% of the graduates coming from ag universities are women. So we run programs now for almost 8 weeks where we take women either graduating or still in the last year of graduation and run them through an 8-week program to give them exposure to what does the world of Bayer or agriculture look like. Okay, get them with a mentor, go out in the field. At the end of it, what it does is it gets them a very different view of the whole opportunity that they can get into. Either they want to go back and do something on their own as an entrepreneur or come and join industry. We take a few of them, and then they're ready to be absorbed by other companies in the rural space, right? As an example. So this is an outstanding program that we have created. And then the other program we have is a program called FOLI, which is for future agricultural leaders in India, where today with other companies, nearly 10,000 students in different schools in rural India are part of the program, getting exposed to agriculture, getting exposed to science and agriculture. And therefore, and the reason I'm highlighting all these is these are all powerful interventions to prepare the future workforce of tomorrow. And we're really, really, really proud of our efforts in this.
That's great. Thank you very much, Dee. It's been a very enlightening conversation. And I have to say, talking to you, it seems like, while Bayer has been here for 125 years, but I think in the last 2 years, it's at a cusp of something very nice, and it's going to go in a very different direction. And I think to sum it up, to say that the capitalist society is going to be having to rule with a socialist heart, which is what a lot of companies like yourselves are doing.
Well said. And I would say we are one of the largest 125-year-old startup in India today. Okay, so that is the way I would like to define ourselves. But before I conclude, thank you very much for the time and great conversation. And everything that I said is not as me as an individual, but as somebody who represents more than 12 to 14,000 employees and associates of Bayer in India today. And without each one of them contributing with passion, we wouldn't be here talking about what we are doing and the journey ahead. And finally, I'll also give a big shout out to a number of partners, right? Possibly I bored you to death about collaboration and partnerships. I'm blessed to have people who have been with us for a number of years. In fact, with one of them, we just celebrated a Golden Jubilee anniversary recently. One of our oldest distributors is 70 years with us.
Fantastic.
So, and then we have a lot of other people who are coming to the fold today, and they've all contributed in this journey as well. So we're truly blessed to have, a great set of people working together as we look forward.
That's fantastic. That shows that you value relationships and people. The company values that, and that's fantastic. That, in any case, will go a long way, in sustaining the success of the company.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much, Dean. It was just an absolute pleasure.
Thank you, and look forward to talking to you in the future as well.
Absolutely.
Take care. Cheers.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.